Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most incredible tissues in the entire animal kingdom, muscle. This is the engine that powers literally everything. It drives the frantic, nonstop beat of a hummingbird's wings and the slow, deliberate crawl of a sloth. So, how can one basic tissue be so unbelievably versatile? Okay, to really get a handle on this, let's start by looking at two extremes from the animal kingdom. Their whole way of life is worlds apart, but the fundamental machinery that makes them go, it's shockingly similar. This contrast is really the heart of the puzzle we're going to solve today. So on one end of the spectrum, you've got the hummingbird. It's just a marvel of high-frequency performance. We're talking about a heart and wings that beat around 30 times every single second. And on the other end, the sloth. A true master of conserving energy, with muscles built for just hanging out, using as little fuel as possible. The performance gap between these two is absolutely immense, and yet it all comes from the same basic toolkit. Yeah, just think about that number for a second. 1,800 beats a minute. The speed and the endurance are just staggering. So how in the world does one type of tissue pull off such completely different jobs? To figure that out, we need to go inside. So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the microscopic motor, then build it all up, piece by piece, into a full-scale machine. After that, we'll look at the spark that ignites it. And finally, we'll zoom back out to see some of the truly wild ways evolution has hacked this basic design. All right, let's zoom all the way down. To really understand how a muscle works, you have to meet the two main characters, the key proteins that are the absolute heart of this molecular engine. And they're an ancient duo. You can find them in nearly all complex cells. Meet actin and myosin. The easiest way to think about them is this. Actin is like a long directional railway track. And myosin? Well, myosin is the motor, the little engine that could. It uses chemical energy from a molecule called ATP to literally pull itself along that track. This one simple interaction is the basis for pretty much all muscle movement. And this quote just nails the core mechanical action. When a myosin head grabs onto that actin track and burns some ATP, its head pivots. I want you to picture a tiny, tiny little arm doing a biceps curl and pulling the track forward. It's that single, microscopic pull multiplied billions and billions of times that actually generates the force we can feel. Okay, so we've got our individual motors and we've got our tracks. So how does nature put all these tiny parts together to create a powerful, coordinated machine that can actually lift things and move us around? See, a single myosin motor isn't going to do much on its own. They have to team up, so hundreds of them bundle together, with all their tails pointing inward, and this creates what we call a thick filament. The whole bouquet of flowers analogy is perfect. You've got the myosin heads sticking out in every direction, ready to grab onto actin and pull inwards toward the center from both sides. And this brings us to the most crucial structure of all, the sarcomere. This is the fundamental repeating unit of muscle. It's just this beautifully organized array of myosin thick filaments and actin thin filaments, and they're anchored at each end by something called a Z-disc. So when those myosin heads pull on the actin, what they're really doing is pulling those Z-disc anchors closer together, which shortens the entire unit. Now, here's a really interesting point that clears up a common mix-up. We always say our muscles are contracting, but a more accurate word is activated. A muscle can generate a ton of force. Think about holding a really heavy box perfectly still without actually changing its length at all. The force is there, but there's no movement. And this is how we scale everything up. It's an incredible hierarchy of structure. You start with those individual protein molecules, actin and myosin. They form filaments. Those organize into the sarcomere units. Then, thousands of sarcomeres link up end to end to form a myofibril, which is kind of like a tiny cable. Bundles of these cables make up one muscle cell, and then bundles of cells make up the whole muscle. Amazing. So, we've built our engine from the molecules all the way up. It's got fuel, ATP, and it's ready to go. But what's the ignition key? What tells the muscle exactly when to fire, and, just as importantly, when to relax? Let's check out the trigger. It's a great question, right? That myosin motor is always eager to grab onto actin and start pulling. If there wasn't some kind of safety system in place, our muscles would just be locked up, totally tense all the time. So what's the lock? The safety lock is a duo of proteins called troponin and tropomyosin. Just think of tropomyosin as a long rope that lies right on top of the actin filament, and it physically covers up all the spots where myosin wants to bind. And tropomyosin? That's the little protein that basically staples that rope down in its blocking position. Okay, so here is the entire elegant chain of command that turns a thought into an action. It starts with a nerve signal, which triggers an electrical wave across the muscle cell. This wave travels down tiny tunnels in the cell and tells a special storage tank called the SR to release a flood of calcium ions. And calcium is the key. It binds to troponin, which then yanks that tropomyosin rope out of the way, totally unlocking the actin filament. Myosin immediately grabs on, and bam, we get force. To relax, the cell just pumps the calcium back into storage, the lock goes back on, and it's over. All right, now that we understand the blueprint, let's zoom back out. Because this is where things get truly amazing. It's just incredible how evolution has taken this one fundamental engine and modified it to do all sorts of specialized jobs. Muscle isn't just for moving. A cicada's loud buzz comes from a muscle that just vibrates a piece of its body at crazy high speeds. A marlin has actually modified an eye muscle into a tiny furnace to keep its brain warm in the freezing ocean. And then you have the electric eel, which has repurposed whole banks of muscle into biological batteries that generate a massive electrical shock instead of movement. And here's one last fascinating concept for you. Sometimes, the most explosive movements don't come from muscle power by itself. Animals like kangaroos or fleas, they use their muscles to slowly load energy into their elastic tendons, kind of like stretching a rubber band. And then they release all that stored energy at once, creating a movement that's way faster and more powerful than any muscle could ever be on its own. It's basically a biological catapult. So we've journeyed from a single protein doing a tiny biceps curl all the way up to biological heaters and catapults. It's just an incredible story of scaling up and adapting. Seeing how far nature has pushed this one basic engine really makes you wonder what other secrets, what other potential might still be hiding untapped within our very own muscles.